So today we're going to talk about best practices and key strategies when it comes to automation. How many people here, by a show of hands, are currently, imagine everyone here is in some way or form interested in automation, but how many people here are looking into improving the automation in the organization, by a show of hands? Okay. How many of you here, again, I'm not going to use this to tackle you guys, how many of you have active projects for automation? Show of hands. So automation, very prevalent. We're all looking to dive into a little bit. Why do we need automation? Very clear, right? We all feel like our day-to-day looks somewhat like this. I don't need to give you guys a slide and talk boring. This speaks for all of us, I think, right? This is the experience. So the market, and then by the market I mean vendors, have tried to bring solutions to this whole gap in automation in a few waves. And I'm just going to give kind of a picture on how at least I see things, what I've seen in the market, where we've come from and where we are today. So the first generation of automation tools for security that we saw was SOAR tools. Show of hands, who here is using a SOAR tool? Show of hands, who here is happy with their SOAR tool? Okay. So SOAR, first generation, problem with it, complex, code heavy. You require some automation engineers usually to build some stuff. I used to sell SOAR for years. On average, the number of playbooks that my customers would deploy, about 3 in a year, something like that. Some larger customers are able to get, a few dozen. Okay, the big ones, these tremendous banks sometimes will get like above 100 or 200. But those are the kinds of customers that have a tremendous amount of money and resources to throw at it. For everybody else in the market, not getting much out of it, right? Now, great vision though, right? Like we all need automation, a tool where you can build these playbooks. It's important. But then we reach the second generation, the low code. What started out being called no code, now it's being called low code with the advent of the big push in AI ever since OpenAI came out, right? So now this is more so being called low code, where basically they provide an improvement on the user experience. It's easier to build with. There are a number of vendors that do this. But now we're in the third generation, which is AI-based. And I will mention something. A lot of these vendors have made the move here. The SOAR vendors have a big problem with moving here because the foundation of what they have built is not ready for that move, okay? But a lot of new vendors that were in the second generation have made the move to the third generation. And we see that. We're one of those vendors, Blink, right? AI-powered automation. So when you understand that you have these new age vendors that are providing AI automation out there, not just Blink, they're able to totally change how you automate your processes today. And that has certain implications, right? Reduce time to automate, okay? You're able to get way more automation. That has a very fundamental impact on how you work, not just from a security perspective, but also from a business, right? The democratization of automation. Suddenly, when it's so easy to build automation, it's not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people in the organization that build your automations. Now this is something that everybody can use to build. This is something that multiple teams, it's not just a tool that the SOC team owns, that the incident responders own, as it was with SOAR. Now automation is something that's available for everybody, or mostly everybody, right? As long as you know security, and you know how to type in free text, which I think is most people today, you can build automation. You no longer need to have those coding capabilities. And this means that there's going to be, and we're seeing it today, a shift in security roles, right? Where companies are moving from, I have 5 automation engineers. Everybody else that needs something from an automation perspective speaks to them. They build it. They deliver it. Bottlenecks. You create this a bottleneck that you're getting rid of essentially because it's no longer sitting just with them. Again, because it's so easy to use, when everybody's able to use it, you don't need to rely on just these few people. You don't need to rely necessarily on a third-party service provider. So changing the way our teams are actually structured. And it doesn't happen at first, and in some cases it doesn't happen at all. But some companies that see this and understand how the technology is changing, they change how their organization is even structured. Not saying it's right for you. Everybody makes their own decision on what makes the most sense for them. But we've seen that with a number of customers. I like to say this line here: being able to automate as fast as your creativity. You have to be able to work that way. If you want to properly automate things in your organization, that's the speed that you need. That if I think about something that I want to automate, it should be as simple and easy as going into a tool, into a platform, just like it would be on a napkin, drawing, okay, if this, do that, do this, do that, draw my little process. It should be just as easy as that. And this changes how we build automation, because you no longer have to do plan, build, which is normally what happens. You have a couple of people, or one person, doesn't matter, who spend days, weeks, months planning out what automation am I going to build, or what does this, I know I need this automation, this process automated. How am I designing it? What should it look like? What should be the processes? What should be the little offshoots going to get approvals from this person, or sending this file to this team and getting a response? Instead of having to spend a lot of time thinking about what is the best way that this automated process should look like, I could just build it as I go. And the reason you don't have to do that anymore is because if you made a mistake in your planning, if you just kind of like, let's just build and see where it goes, then the impact later you're going to spend after you do that, you're going to spend a lot of time actually writing code and building, or whether it's in a SOAR or Logic apps or Terraform jobs, or Jenkins jobs, wherever you might want to build some code. The price that you're going to pay for having made a mistake is much higher. But today it's no longer the case, because now it's AI, or even if you're not even using the AI modules in these tools, it's drag and drop, right? So pretty simple, pretty easy to make a mistake. I know that whenever I build workflows, and I'm not in the security team, but I'm a salesperson, so I do all kinds of business workflows, CRM stuff. If my Salesforce this, send a message to this person, blah, blah, blah. When I do those kinds of things, I build. My automation tool is my canvas. If I make a mistake, before I publish it, obviously I don't publish before I check it, I can quickly drag and drop and swap it out. That is my canvas. That is my napkin for where I draw my process. So it's okay to make those mistakes. This makes time to automate even faster because you're able to build faster. So I mentioned this before. When the automation is simple, it's made easy, all teams can automate. There's no reason that every team in your security department shouldn't be able to automate their own stuff. And we see that, right? Again, I'm going to throw out Blink here, but it's not just Blink. We have customers, and all these, all of the vendors like us have customers that purchase from all these other areas, not just the SOC, right? SOC is the easiest one, right? There's a SOAR tool they're replacing, that you might be replacing, and you're looking for something better. Yes, these tools are a big improvement, and you can completely replace them, 100%. But the real cool thing in my eyes is it's not just giving 50x better results there, or 20x, or 100x, depends on how you work. It's the fact that now the compliance team doesn't need to bother too many people. They can just build their own stuff. It's that the IT operations, they can do their own stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So we are moving from an era of responsive automation, response automation like we saw with SOC, with SOAR, to proactive automation, to proactive security. Because as opposed to just responding to alerts and incidents, okay? I don't know how many of you like that movie Batman, but I love that movie, okay, with the Joker. So you're able to move to a place where, like I mentioned before, all teams can automate, and usually the automations that those teams do, they're not based off of alerts. It's not if alert, then take the phishing, classic example, right? That SOARs usually give. On an email alert, a phishing alert, send the file to Virus Total, get a verdict, check this, all those things. No, you're doing all kinds of things like offboarding. On HR tool, if the employee is terminated, go to all my tools and just remove access automatically, right? Vulnerability management, all kinds of scanning, patch management, okay? Incredible things you can do. Threat intel. We have customers that do stuff that aren't even related to security, which is also interesting. But the idea is that you can really take care. I'm going to give you guys a personal example because this just really shows how it's simple and easy. This is a real example that I use it. When a partner at Blink wants to do a deal registration, so basically if any of you are talking to a partner and the partner wants to say, this is my customer, so none of the other partners sell to you, just so you know how it looks on our side with the vendors and the partners, they do what's called a deal registration. And so they tell the vendor, hey, I have a potential deal here, give me 3 months or 6 months of exclusivity on it. And so that comes to us and then we approve. Now, at Blink, we could have bought a solution for that, but I, myself, just in a few minutes, built a workflow that's triggered by a web form, and I share that web form link with my partners. I say, this is where you do deal registrations. They put the details that normally we request. I get that in a Slack message. It gets sent to me in our Slack channel called Deal Registrations. Okay? I get all the information. I click approve, don't approve, give me more details, whatever I want. And then if it's approved, they get an email saying it's been approved, you have this many days. And then also the details, it calculates for me what is 90 days later, what is 100 days, 80 days later. Takes all that information, puts it in a table within Blink, and then a week before, well, I'm going to simplify just so I don't need to spend too much time on this. When the expiration comes, another workflow, or I should say it this way, a workflow is running once every 24 hours that is checking every day at 1 a.m., whatever, which of these have expired and is sending a message to the partner and to myself, hey, this deal registration has expired. So simple, easy. And it's just drag and drop. I did a little bit of Copilot, built it for me, Blink Copilot, and then I just drag and dropped like a step or two that I felt needed to be tweaked. Done. Simple and easy. I got off on a tangent on that. So those are some implications and kind of what we're seeing and what we're going to see more when it comes to automation, how that's affecting how we work. But let's talk about planning. Keep clicking here, but the truth is it's over here. So there are some critical success factors, some things I think that are important to keep in mind when you want to, and you could look at this, by the way, as how to evaluate an automation tool, given what we're seeing today as far as the tech stack, the tools that are out there, okay? So performance limitations have become ever more important now. When you are running workflows, and I'm talking about hundreds of workflows, not 3 playbooks anymore, suddenly the performance is way more important. You have to make sure that your tool can handle whatever your scale is. Maybe you don't have large scale and that's okay. Maybe you are UBS or HSBC. There was a gentleman from HSBC here before, right, on stage? So maybe you're at that scale. You got to make sure that your tool can handle performance. Be wary of that. Second, monitoring of workflows. Automation sounds great. I build a workflow, it works. That's great. Life is not perfect. There are sometimes issues, whether it's the vendor or in a lot of cases, whether it's something on your side, on the customer side, something in your environment changed, some issue. If I have so many workflows deployed in my environment and I'm starting to do business critical stuff, I better be sure that if something fails, I have a way to monitor it. I have a way to make sure that the health of my automation is being taken care of. So that's something important to keep in mind as well. Whether this means that you need to look for specific features or whatnot, that I leave to you guys, but these are just the high-level things to keep in mind, to look for, to make sure that you don't put yourself in a problem where later on, you know what, this thing is failing constantly and we didn't even know about it. I'm finding out about it 4 days later You don't want to be in those kinds of scenarios. The UI itself has to cater to such mass automation, right? If you're going to use, if you were to take probably an old SOAR tool and you were to use the same user interface to manage the amount of automations that you have in like a modern tool, it's not efficient. As a human, when you see a list of hundreds of automations, that's very difficult to process and understand what's connected to what and what is doing what. So the user interface of such a tool has to be able to cater to that. And the reason I mention that is when you're doing a demo or you're doing a POC of such a tool, and there's not much content for you to see that yet, then I'll say the network of referencing between workflows and subflows and all kinds of things, you don't see that problem yet. But what I'm trying to say is be mindful that that will come. If vendors like me are promising mass automation, hyper automation, all these terms that you've heard of, the market hasn't decided yet what is the proper term. That's why I kind of use them interchangeably. So if we're promising all this big, change in automation that you're going to have, they have to be able to cater to that. And a lot of the new vendors, I'll say, a lot of the new vendors themselves are not there yet. Even me, myself, and I'm being completely honest with you right now. Again, took the hat of the sales guy at Blink off for this speech. Even I think Blink itself has ways to go in this respect because we're all early on in this journey, and so we're reaching the point, we're just of late reaching the point where we have customers that are running hundreds of things in parallel, and so we're seeing these kinds of issues come up. How do we make it so that the user in an easy way can understand his automation environment, his automation ecosystem? So important to keep in mind. Ease of integration, I think that's a no-brainer. An automation tool is only as good as its integrations. If they don't have the integrations that you need, it's a problem. But if they don't have the tools, the integrations that you need, but they're easy to integrate with, right? They have the tech that is super simple, that's okay, right? But you need to check that. You need to make sure that, okay, you've got most of my tech stack, but if I change something later or whatnot, or if there's an internal application that I use that I want to be able, how easy is it for me to integrate? That's a question that we get very common. It's a very, very common question. It's a good question to ask. Pricing model. Again, given the kinds of automation you're going to see, the mass automation, all these different things happening, does it make sense to be user-based like SOAR is, paying 20,000 euros per user, throwing out a number, right? Does it make sense to pay per workflow? Does it make sense to pay per API call, right? So there are a number of different models out there. Everybody has their advantages. I can obviously speak to what I think our advantages are, but I'm not going to do that now. Check, make sure it makes sense for you, right? But keep in mind the general principle. If it's mass automation, what makes the most sense? And this is an interesting one, the safeguards for citizen development. So if you're taking on a tool which allows everybody in the organization to build, and not everybody, you're not going to give access to everybody, but everyone that you want to have, broader than what you normally had with your SOC team maybe, that's a bit scary, right? How many of you have more than 100 people in your security teams? By a show of hands. A few of you. Imagine giving 100 people access, and forget even giving 10 people access to build automations. They have access to all these APIs, to all the connections of all your tools. It's very sensitive stuff, right? They could either accidentally or intentionally, or maybe their credentials were stolen and this is, an attacker. They can do some really bad things. So how do you protect yourself from potentially, this, what do we call it? A supply chain attack, right? I guess you could say, if someone were to breach the automation tool, or if someone were to intentionally, an insider threat, someone were to intentionally use Blink to do some, isolate every endpoint in the environment, encrypt, I don't know what, right? I'm scaring you guys, I know, but I promise it's not that bad. So you have to make sure that the tool can give you the necessary comfort, security in those areas. And it's the same concepts you guys are familiar with, right? We have to have good RBAC, there has to be good segregation. The same principles that you're used to for applying good security have to apply in your automation tool, but it's especially important in such a tool, okay? This is just a little bit of a dive in on that. I had a few customers that really wanted to get into this specifically, so I kind of broke this down a little bit more, right? It starts with user training, making sure that users understand so they don't make the mistakes. RBAC, like I mentioned, segregation of everything. I gotta know this whole thing by heart, I guess. And procedural. This is one that not a lot of people think about until they're there. So hopefully I can help you cut the line here and reach the insight that a lot of our customers and we received as well. That there's also procedural things. How do I want to work with the tool so that I can make sure that my citizen developers are, not breaking anything, not doing anything inappropriate, right? So it could be something like, and this is not necessarily on the vendor, this is on a customer in a lot of ways. So I'll give you a feature, and then off of the feature I'll explain to you what the customer can do with it in order, based on how they think the procedure should be to better protect themselves. So I'm pretty sure every vendor, modern vendor, has this. Workspaces, right? Every team, every user can have their own workspace to build their own automations. But the question is, from a procedural perspective, do I want to give every person, every team, their own workspace? And then based on RBAC, they can do certain things? Or do I want to maybe confine all of my citizen developers to one workspace that is not able to publish workflows, and when they're ready, it goes for review to somebody else who will then put it in one of the other workspaces, which is production? Or do I want, just like I said before, that everyone has access, but instead of them freely being able to just publish, that it gets sent for peer review, but it's within the production workspace. So there's a lot of different ways to work with it, and these are the kinds of things that when you understand the features of whatever tool you're looking at, potentially, that you want to make sure that you think about the procedural part as well. How do I want to work? What's the best way for me to work to make sure I'm working securely? Every customer is different, by the way, right? Everybody likes to work different. So implementation. Now this one, the slide I'm about to show, if it is the next slide, I don't remember the exact order here, but if it is, let's just check. Nope, it's not the next one. Great. We'll get to that part as well. So there's a couple of do's and don'ts. Everything I'm sharing with you here is based off of, I've been involved in dozens, if not hundreds, of RFIs, POCs, with lots of customers working on projects. So I'm sharing with you the knowledge I've gained from what those customers have shared with us and what they're looking for, and then from us actually going the distance, what have been, from our customer success perspective, what have been some of the feedbacks we've received. So some do's and don'ts. Make sure for your automation project, if you're looking into automation, to define business objectives. Know why you're doing automation. I want to save time, this and that. That's great, but there is usually some specific things you want to really achieve there, right? I suggest defining them so you know what it is you're looking for. Defining a project owner. Even if you're doing, hey, everybody can automate, define someone that owns the project, that they can manage it. Because in the end of the day, it's still some vendor that you're going to be working with who needs to be the contact point and such, and be able to corral internally who you need in order to get the project to your business objectives that you set. Create awareness internally and I'm talking about the new modern age tools, right? If you're building this new automation infrastructure where everyone's able to build, keep in mind that you want to think about, how do I incentivize others? How do I get them hands-on? Because in the end of the day, even if you're only responsible for one team or multiple teams, but there's still a few others, the others, if they use your tool as well, it makes your life easier. when you're using the tool. What I mean by that, again, I'm jumping to a feature to explain, to give you a good example, is imagine that you have a process, and I think I mentioned this to a couple of folks here in the crowd at the booth. When you have a process that you own, and that team has a process that they own, and like most use cases, it's very rare that a use case starts and ends within your team without it ever going out, right? Sometimes it'll be, starts with that person, then it comes to me, then it jumps to our service provider, or maybe the opposite. Maybe it's a service provider, because I have an outsourced SOC that's doing, tier 1, tier 2 for me. So they'll send me an email, they'll do something, they'll send me an email with something I have to do, isolate an endpoint, who knows what, which goes to this team, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're able to get others on board, then they could build a workflow for their process. You could build a workflow for your process. And rather than the bridge having to be manual, an email or this or that, and even if you build a workflow that listens to that, what you could do is you could take your workflow, save it as a subflow, black box it, give it to them, for them to use in their workflows. So I could, if I own isolation of an endpoint, and for me it's a simple 3 steps. I want to isolate Sentinel-1, the endpoint in Sentinel-1, I want to create a ticket, and I want to send just a notification on Teams or Slack or WhatsApp or who knows what to my security people. That's just simple. I'll save that. I'll expose it to the other team. They can use it. They see just one action. They don't know what's inside. That requires some input parameters. They reference in the details that it needs. Done. Now I still own my process. I can still update it. I can change it. I can do whatever I want with it. But we're getting automation across the board. So that awareness will help you get to a point where you're working more efficiently across the board, is my point. And there's something which this requires a little bit more, I would say, belief and attention to your automation platform, right? It's not so common, but I recommend it. Changing the mindset, getting to a place where any problem that you have, and I do mean that, any problem that you have, any challenge you're trying to overcome in the security space, to first ask yourselves, before anything else, can I automate that? And the reason is, I've seen plenty of scenarios where, and I'm not trying to say that we replace tools or any of the other tools that you see here or out there. It's not the case, because most of the cases it's not the scenario. But you'll find that in a lot, I have customers that say, you guys are an amazing Band-Aid solution. Because beyond the use cases that I have and all these things that I do, that I automate, whenever the board comes down and says, you have to handle this better, you have to do that, what are we doing about this thing? And I don't have a tool to handle this right now, because you guys integrate with my infra and all my things as any vendor would, right? Except we integrate with, these vendors like us, we integrate with everything, okay? I'm able to just Band-Aid it, build a workflow that does this, this, and this, and you give me like 80% of what I would get from some other tool that I buy, right? I threw out 80%, guys. It's not always 80%. It's a lot less. It's more. It really, really depends. But the idea being that I can apply a Band-Aid, board is happy. I can, within half an hour, I can show them, here is a workflow that's now automating this, and a dashboard that also takes the data of how many things happen, blah, 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 blah. Here you go, taken care of, done. What? I was expecting next month at the board meeting, next quarter at the board meeting, you to show us what your plan is for what you're going to do about this. That's the level, right? So it's a great Band-Aid solution as well. So can I automate that? Don't expect the automations to build themselves. Someone has to do it in the end of the day. Someone has to have the know-how, the understanding, in order to, not just of general security, but of your environment, in order to actually build it. And someone has to build it. Yes, services are offered, right? Blink and other vendors do that as well. So you could ask questions about that if you have issues with time. I don't have enough time even to do that stuff. But still, be aware that someone has to build this stuff. And don't expect to automate everything. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't automate everything. But in a lot of cases, you're going to find that, we're basically saying, guys, we've lowered the bar really low for how easy it is to automate, but it's still not 100%. right? So you still have that breaking point where you say it's not worth it to spend the time on this niche little scenario, in order to automate it away. Again, that bar has been moved far out, so it's still a tremendous of value. Don't let that discourage you, but just be aware there's still some things you can't do. Okay? At home, I wish I could automate taking the garbage out and clean the dishes, and my wife would be much happier, but I can't. There's always limits. And this is another one. And this is more, I would say, for POC stages. So if you're going into a POC with an automation tool, you're looking to build some automation, keep in mind that the IT will need to sign off, in a lot of cases, depending on your organization, on connecting the tools. It's not as flat out easy, right? I've had a number of scenarios where security team is like, wow, this is amazing, let's get going, and we start to show them how we can build, and we build the workflows. They're there, they're ready. It's 2 buttons, click connections and API token, add, whatnot. IT for their company doesn't approve it yet, and you get stuck. So before diving into that, make sure you can connect, make sure you can get the credentials and whatever you need to do that. Save yourself some time in this scenario where they're not. Or there's another workaround, which is find how the tool can give them value as well and bring them into the POC. That's kind of like, playing what's the name of that show? House of Cards. Would you call that an old show now? I don't know. How old the hell? When was the last time that one was out? Yeah. But this is that slide I was talking about. So this is pretty straightforward. It's not nothing new that you wouldn't come up with yourself, but I feel I feel it's important to put it out. When you're trying to figure out, all right, now I'm getting started. Now I'm going to build. Where do I start? There's just so much that we could do, right? Go by the 5 mosts. What am I neglecting? There's so many things where you're saying, you know what? I am just closing my eyes and hoping that nothing's going to come from that, whatever, bank of alerts that I don't get to, or dealing with these vulnerabilities that I just never have time for. I have no idea. But there's always something that customers are neglecting, reasonably so, right? Time management and such. You're making a risk calculation, and that just happens to be one of those areas that doesn't get attention. So that's one area to think about. What can I automate there, right? Things that are repetitive, naturally, the stuff that you feel like you're doing over and over again. The stuff that's consequential, time sensitive. If there's a breach, what do I do, right? Happens once in a long while, but when it happens, and you need to be ready. So those are good things to be prepared for, right? We came up with a term that we call SecCon. So I was sharing this with some people earlier. So there's just in the U.S. there's for the military there's different levels of nuclear war called DEFCON, for those of you familiar. And so we created the term SecCon, which is basically 5 levels of SecCon, where you have a set of workflows, and each team could build their own piece to it. And the CISO basically has in the self-service portal buttons that he can click or she can click, that when they click, based on the level, will trigger whatever that level requires. Whether it's complete isolation of the network and all these different things and who knows what. Wake everybody up, I don't know, maybe we have an integration with people's alarm clocks. That'd be cool. Wake everybody up, create a Zoom meeting, Teams meeting, get them all on a call. And that'd be pretty scary if we got integration with people's alarm clocks. That'd be bad. But you understand the point. So being prepared for such scenarios. Things that are time consuming, that's obvious. And this is not as obvious, but things that are annoying for the teams. The human resource element, right? I hire someone, they stay with me for a year, they leave. I spent 9 months trying to recruit him. I got him for a year, and then then he or she has left. So keeping your teams happy by just asking them, what is really annoying for you? What do you hate dealing with? It's once a month, but I just hate having to deal with it. Yeah, well, now we'll automate it away for you, right? So it's a good place to start as well. So that is, at least I would say from my experience, what Blink is. That's what the next part is. That is a bit about the best practices, key strategies that we've seen. I would say to everybody, feel free to come and speak with us at the booth and get more, understand more. about either what I talked about up until now or what I'm about to share with you, which is a little bit about Blink itself, what it looks like and how we work and how we provide some of these things. I'll also mention that if anybody wants, at these conferences, we always take a TV so we can show what we want to show, and then we raffle it off at the end. So we opened a box, 43-inch TV. Feel free to come by and just sign in you just got to sign up for the raffle, the prize, I think at 3:45. Let me actually ask you guys a question. Who here is still going to be, who's going to still be here at 3:45? Raise your hand. Okay, because there's some people that say like they don't think they'll be here. I want to make sure that we're not just doing a raffle and no one's here. So feel free to come sign up. Raffle's at 3:45. Free TV. We have the box and everything. We haven't thrown it out, so we'll box it back up for you. Great little thing. So now I'm going to show you a little bit of what Blink is specifically. So I'm taking the speaker hat off. As much as I did speak a little bit salesy, I know. I'm going to put on the sales hat a little bit, okay? But I promise to keep it technical and not too marketing bullshit. I don't like to do slides. I'm going to jump in straight away to a little live demo for you. Okay. So in Blink, whenever I want to automate a process, it's as simple as, and I'm going to show an incident response use case, right? Classic. I just come in and I say, and it doesn't matter what the tool is. By the way, is this too small, or would you guys like me to zoom in a little bit? It's fine? Okay. Maybe I'll do a little bit just for the people in the back. You never know. There you go. So on a Splunk alert, if the alert is critical, I want to suspend the user in Okta. I want to isolate the endpoint with Sentinel-1. See, I got a typo, and Copilot doesn't really care about typos, but I'm a little bit OCD. Create a ticket in Jira, maybe. So what I'm doing now is I'm prompting Blink Copilot, who is looking at our 30,000 APIs across almost 400 vendor integrations, our 8,000 workflows that come out of the box, and our documentation. It's trained on all of that. And based off of my input, it provides, essentially a workflow. Yes, I've done this one before, so I'm going to jump into it. I'm not going to iterate on the thing. And you can see that it's built the workflow for me. All I have, you can open each of these and you can see that there are no code steps. Okay? It's referenced in, for the most part, all the details I need. All I have to do is add my connections, and I'm done. Now, maybe I could build with Blink Copilot. I can edit with Blink Copilot if I wanted. But I can also build and edit just using drag and drop. So I don't have to use Copilot. So let's say I wanted to send a Teams message and notify somebody, right? So let's just bring in Teams. So I'll just drag and drop this in here. And I'll say, well, let's not do to an email. We'll do to a channel. So I'll go to channel security. And I'll say, you know what, actually, I'm going to do Slack because this is a new environment and they just added, I can show it to you live, actually. Channel, no, I'll do it to my email. This way I have it open here. I'm hard coding it now, but normally I would reference that in and I would say, hey, check this out. And I'll use the variable picker, which is available in any field in Blink, where I can reference in a piece of metadata, the event payload, maybe the output of a previous step, whatever it is. Somebody throw out a random color. Blue? Somebody throw out your favorite food. Chocolate? I hope you're not eating too much. That's not really a food. That's more of a snack. So now all I have to do, I thought they added in this environment. Okay, well, I don't have it in this environment. I thought they added it to this environment. I guess I was wrong. But I asked for those just because I wanted to show you something that wasn't just me typing, because you never know. Maybe it's a video, right? Sorry about that. I thought I had a connection here. Anyway, so you would put in whatever details you want, right? And you would get a message into your Slack, into your Teams, whatever it is. Continue the workflow. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I had the connections here. It's a brand new environment. So that's it. It's that simple. It's that easy to build an automation. And I gave you an incident response use case, but it could be anything. It could be, I showed this actually to a gentleman before, to a couple of gentlemen before. It could be onboarding, offboarding, right? So I have a bunch of workflows here that will offboard based off of this one workflow that triggers them, that on my HR tool, like I mentioned before, go to all my different tools and remove the user's access. But it goes even beyond that, because I could also have the data. So within Blink, you have tables as well. It's just a feature called tables, where you can use workflows to feed the, fill the tables with data. And then you can have workflows sit on top of those tables, listening to them and triggering off of them. So if you see an IP more than 3 times, every day at 1 a.m. run, and if the date, I gave an example before, if the date is passed, then do something. Whatever it is, you build the logic with a workflow to decide when to trigger workflows. So that's statefulness. It's a whole other dimension of use cases, really interesting, that you can do. You could put your list of vulnerabilities here. You could put a list of IOCs, just to give you an idea of the kinds of things you could do. But the reason I explain this now is because, getting back to the offboarding use case, is that I also have this workflow fill a table with users and what they have access to, and I have workflows that are updating it constantly with what they have access to. And then on top of that, I build a dashboard, which you can build for any table or multiple for one table for specific use cases. In this case, I want to get visibility into offboarding, where you can see, in this case here in the bottom is all those users that offboarding has been completed, as you can see with the checkboxes. Care to share with the class? It's okay. So, but then you also have those that are still open, right? Where I can see, well, these users haven't been properly offboarded yet, because sometimes there are things, and by the way, this is when you get to a place with hyper-automation where you're automating a tremendous amount of stuff, you end up on the other side of things where you realize there's some stuff that no matter what you do, you just still can't fully automate. But we still want to provide you guys value. We want you to be able to cover the use case end to end. So what we do is we give you something like this, a dashboard, to manage it. Now, an example is for the offboarding, users have to return their laptops if they're being offboarded, right? They left the company. You can't really automate that part, right? So what you do here is you have in the table, for example, you see everybody that's been offboarded who haven't returned their laptops or any other thing that they haven't done yet. And now I can manage this, right? I even have an urgency score that I can build using workflows to say, well, based on the tool that the user has access to, that should increase the urgency. Based on how many, or I don't know how long it's been, whatever you want. You could build all kinds of logic to determine what kind of urgency score I want to put there. And the beauty is it's all done with workflows which are very, very, very simple, easy to build with, right? Like you saw before. So that's just another example. But again, you could use this for anything. I'm just going to throw random examples out there. We have compliance teams that use this. Check my AWS S3 bucket compliance, send me a Slack message, Teams message, create a report, automatically remediate, whatever it might be. And do that once every 24 hours, not once a year. So compliance teams are always happy with us because it's like, you're telling me I don't have to spend a few months? Like, you could spend now 4 days, and I threw out that number, don't catch me to it, I have no idea. Okay, you could spend a few days now instead of a few months in order to deal with your stuff. We have vulnerability management teams that do cool stuff. We have cloud security teams. On a whiz alert, if, find the relevant developer, send them a message on Teams, Slack, whatever, and I can't really see what that says. Oh, lunch now? Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to keep you guys from lunch then, but you get the point. I'm going to finish in 20 seconds. That's how simple it is. You could use it for anything and everything. We're a workflow automation platform for everything security. Feel free to come to our booth, have a conversation. I'm going to hang back here for as long as people come, so feel free to come and ask me questions. Happy to discuss. So thank you very much for listening to me, and enjoy the rest of the conference.